Welcome back to Operation Evil. This episode is called Unholy Brotherhood, featuring Heather and Mandi. That's right, they are both back. We're all together, and we're going to cover a story that Heather insisted on, which was really interesting. Really interesting. And it's probably listener discretion advised on this one for sure. But if you're not on Patreon, and I announced it already over there, I recorded my granddaughter, who's 2, almost 3, saying saying certain words, and I'm gonna randomly insert them in episodes. Like I got her to say guilty, not guilty, thanks for listening, like that kind of thing. So if you ever hear this little kid in the episodes just randomly pop up and say things, that is it. It reminds me of, like, in South Park where the guy would record his daughter's voice and she was like Ike. Do you remember that? She did Ike's voice. But anyway,
Yeah, that's
anyways.
so cute. I love that you have a little soundboard now.
Yeah, I'm
Guilty.
like, I'm so excited to put these in episodes.
I felt lizard.
Lizard,
Yeah,
lizard. Oh no,
exactly.
Nayoka, you have a handful now. You got me and Heather, and then you got Ray here in the background. It's
Mhm.
it's over.
It is. I love it.
Yeah.
But
Now Ray is
Heather,
doing lizard.
Heather, you are gonna pretty much carry this episode, and me and Mandi are gonna hop in
Yes, feel free.
and join the fun. So if you want to take it away.
All right. So, this story is about a group of men who were then are now deemed the Chicago Ripper Crew. And they were one of the most disturbing criminal groups in the 80s in Chicago. At the center of this group was a man named Robin Gecht, and he actually once worked for John Wayne Gacy, and we'll come back around to that pretty soon. If you don't know who he was the clown killer. And Gacy started building up his own cult-like following, and he enlisted some fellers named Edward Spitzer and 2 brothers, Andrew and Thomas Cocorales. I hope I didn't butcher that, but I don't guess it really matters. And they started this little group, and it became their obsession to be obsessed with Satanism and heavy metal music, violent fantasies, and they grew into these horrible and horrifying rituals when they started to abduct women, torture them, and then ultimately murder them. They targeted women who were in vulnerable situations out in the middle of the evening. Some of them were prostitutes, not all of them were prostitutes. Some of them were upstanding young women coming up in their career, and they subjected them to horrific and gruesome assaults, so to speak. The victims sometimes were gang raped. A lot of them had mutilated breasts in some way, and their body part were used for their satanic rituals, and sometimes they were even consumed by them in cannibalism.
Ew.
Right? So the men refer to their gatherings as these dark communions, where they would partake in cannibalism and then also use body parts to sexually gratify themselves. So at one point, and I researched this a couple of times, 3 or 4, and I couldn't really find where this quote is from, but it's from the leader, Robin Gecht, and he says, well, in answer to your question on obsession with breasts, it's a thing my entire family, going back as I am told to my great-grandfather. Each of us men have married large-breasted women. My ex-wife is a 39D, and yes, she was very satisfying to me. So, yeah, and I'm assuming that was with some kind of law enforcement where that came up.
I saw it too, because I watched something on it too, just so I knew kind of what you were talking about. And he even said that his sexual infatuation with breast was like passed down through his family, and by sexual infatuation, I mean the weird side of it.
Yes,
And while mental health disorders are hereditary, very specific ones like his, I don't know if you get into it, but the picarism with the breasts where he's
right,
likes to break them, that's not really specifically hereditary.
right. Necrophilia, yeah, we know.
Yeah, a little weird.
Yeah.
All right. So then they were, after the fact of these, that when they were caught, people who knew him, Robin, they would describe him as sexually fixated on breasts and specifically the nipple of the breast. So, like we said, under discretion, right? Later, after they had been arrested and put away, women had started to come forward and recall that he would subject them to disturbing sort of quote unquote experiments with their breasts, kind of not really piercing the nipples, but mutilating the nipples in weird ways. He said he wanted to see how it looked, what the inside of the breast looked like, how the wounds healed. And it was just this like morbid curiosity that he had. He wanted to know like how it all worked. Whatever.
Would that be considered a fetish, maybe? Just a, I don't know.
It's not really a fetish because fetish is still like on the okay side of like sexual interest. It would be more of like a paraphilic disorder, and that's where it starts getting to be like the bad side of things, you know.
Yeah.
But I was also thinking too, who was the other serial killer that had a thing with like cutting off the breast and he was trying to make them into like paperweights? Who was that?
What? I don't know this.
Yeah, I missed that episode too.
Oh, I don't, Nayako, I don't think it was one of your episodes, but it was a famous serial killer, and I can't remember who it was. I
Ooh.
wanted to say it was Geen, but I could be wrong. I'll have to look that up and I'll pop back in later and let you guys know.
So he did this to the women and they were, were coming forward. But at that time too, like when it was actually happening, the women were too scared to bring forth these accusations against him. Like, who's going to believe I let somebody do this and that they actually did it and all this kind of stuff. And they feared that he would come back for them and do even worse. Inside his home, and there's several different ways that it's described on several different sites and several different documentaries. One said that he lived in an apartment and one said that he lived in a home. But either way, he renovated his attic and made this satanic temple. He adorned the walls with inverted crosses, and they often recited verses and passages from the Satanic Bible. So what I found, because I thought this was kind of strange, is that he decorated them and people do the upside down cross. So to me, upside down crosses are historically tied to Peter and not Satanism, because Peter, who is a disciple of Jesus, was also crucified, but he did not want to be crucified in the same way that Jesus was. So he asked to be crucified upside down because he knew that he wasn't who Jesus was. So anyway, just a little history. And so he actually requested to be hung upside down. And so Gecht found all these twisted meanings in all of this to be fascinating. He, like Charles Manson, took the music and interpreted it to make it believe what he wanted it to believe. He believed the heavy metal lyrics held spiritual significance, and he played all the death metal, as we call it, or whatever. And he used those things. And by no means, so don't come running after me, am I saying that music is satanic. I'm just saying they took it to the next level and were finding the messages and making them to be what they wanted to hear to make what they were doing okay.
This is all during the era of the Satanic Panic, right?
Yeah, this is like in the 80s. So this is like right with Gacy and Bundy and all
Yeah,
that.
so it was toward the end of the Satanic Panic. So what you were saying about the upside down cross, I actually knew about that. So that's kind of interesting because a lot of people don't. And the upside down cross being associated with like Antichrist was brought about because of the Satanic Panic era, and that's where people started saying, "Oh, it's Antichrist," and that's not really what it was meant to be, as you had mentioned, which was really interesting. You put that in there.
I'm learning something new. That was interesting.
Yeah. All right, so Gecht at this point, he's like made himself and concreted himself in the role as the leader of this group he's started. And the other guys, Spreitzer and the Kokorales brothers, were easily influenced men. Like some of the things said that they were all kind of below average intelligence, that they weren't leaders, they were definitely followers, that they would do things without question, take orders, and have this just willingness to obey, and I guess like a sense to fit in.
That's exactly who you would want in your
Nyoka, let's go.
thing if you're gonna do all this stuff, right? Nobody question you.
Oh yeah, and you've talked about that in a lot of your episodes, Nayokas, with the narcissism, and then when it comes to the cults, and then the charismatic leaders. Yeah, so yeah, this one fits right in with your common
Perfect.
theme, Nyoka.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So together they prowled Chicago in this red van, and this red van is going to really come into play later. That's how they
A
get.
red van. I always heard that red is like would attract the police. I don't know if it still does, but did you hear that back in the
Yeah,
day?
yeah, like red cars were easily targeted.
Yeah.
Well, there is a cop here, so
Ask.
is there candy in that van? Because I'm so there.
Right. All right. So they trolled Chicago in this red van, and they were trolling because they were specifically looking for women to abduct. And then once they chose this woman, they would take turns and they would overpower her, and they would take her. Most of the time, that the woman was drugged, and they would take her to the quote unquote chapel. And sometimes some women were taken to a random motel room, but most of the time they took them back to his chapel. And wherever they took them, though, they were torturing these women. They amputated their breasts using piano wires.
Oh.
And then once they amputated the breast, they would, for lack of better terms, have sex with the corpse where the breast was missing.
Hmm.
Yes. And then they would consume the flesh of the breasts.
I also I heard something else. Nyoka, I'll give you a little pause in case you need to cut this part out. But what I had heard is they played a little game of I guess they call it limp biscuit with the mutilated breast.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's if it weren't already nasty enough as it was, that's beyond disgusting.
Yes. Capital Nasty. So then they would most often, in most of the time when the breasts were amputated, so to speak, the victim was still alive. And then they would use blunt force trauma to kill her. They used a hatchet most of the time to hit the back of the skull. And then they would take the bodies and dump them in alleyways, cemeteries, empty fields, desolate areas, things of that nature. And then there was some victims who actually survived. One of these victims was named Angel York. She was abducted, repeatedly raped inside this red van. They forced her to actually mutilate herself with a knife.
Oh my God, that's so mean.
They gave her the knife and they were forcing her to take her own breast off. She hesitated, and one of them grabbed her hand and drove the blade into her breast. And then, of course, they did what they do to the wounded breast. And then they taped up her injuries this time and shoved her out into the street because they thought that they had stabbed her deep enough that the wound was fatal. So in her agony, she was doing all she could do to stay alive. And she remembers this red van. And she remembers that there was plywood in the van that made like this partition between the front seats of the van and the back of the open part of the van. And that she remembered seeing remember girls back in the 80s of the clips we used to wear in our hair with the feathers? I don't know if you're as old as I am because I'm old. But and it was actually like a roach clip. Do you remember those? And
Oh yeah.
So this roach clip with like feathers on it was hanging from the rear view mirror. So when she got to tell her story, that was one of the key details.
I don't think a roach clip is like the official name of it. I think only certain of us call it a roach clip. You get what I mean? Like, oh my God, my mom's gonna listen to this.
Oh, sorry. All the things that said, that's what she described it as, this roach clip with feathers on it. So anyway,
it's our generation.
Yeah. Love you, Mom.
We know.
She had remembered these details, thank goodness. But they still, she still doesn't know why they let her go. They just thought the only thing they can think of is, like I said, they thought that her wounds would be bad enough that she would bleed out and eventually die. Then there was another survivor named Beverly Washington, and she was kidnapped by the crew in October of 1982. She was also raped by all the men. Her breasts were amputated. and she was left on the train tracks to die. And against the odds, she too survived, and she also gave descriptions of the van. Other victims were not as fortunate. A lady named Linda Sutton, she was a mother of 2. She was one of the first women believed to be killed by the crew. Lorraine Borowski, probably messing that up, was abducted outside her workplace and murdered. She was actually a realtor, and she was taken right off the street. Her shoes were still on the street. They took her, and then pretty much in daylight it was.
Oh, man.
Shawa, I don't know how to say it. It's Shui. She was found decomposed months after she was reported missing. Sandra Delaware was discovered along the riverbank. Rose Davis was found in an alleyway, and Rose Beck and Susan Baker were later identified after the group had been arrested. Some victims, like Carol Pappas, the wife of a Chicago Cubs player, she remained linked to the clue through only suspicion. The true number of women killed by them may never be known, but it's between 18 to 20 that they have admitted to.
Wow. And it sounds like they do the same thing to each one.
Very, very similar. And it took them to about the 3rd or 4th person to realize that they were probably dealing with, at that time, they didn't know it was more than one. They just knew probably one serial killer. And they would do the same with all the women. They would take them to their quote unquote chapel, have these rituals, say these satanic passages, consume the breasts, use them as sexual gratification, all that. So in the early 80s, as we know, the forensic science was limited. Bodies were often discovered in advanced stages of decomposition, which made it difficult to line up with the days of death. There weren't many body farms, if any, then. DNA technology was not existent, and traditional methods failed to yield strong leads. For months, the police knew these killers were active but couldn't catch them. Edward Spitzer, one of the members, later described one particularly gruesome killing, and he said in an interview, "We picked up a black female, blindfolded her and gagged her. Robin shot her point blank in the head, put chains around her neck and legs, attached 2 bowling balls, and threw her in the water. I understand why they didn't find her." That was his quote. He also recalled Gecht, Robin the leader, attacking women with knives in alleys, hacking at their chests, and committing sexual acts to the open wounds while the victims were screaming in agony. Some of them were beaten to death with axes, others tortured with ice picks and razors. And their level of satanism was shocking even to some of the most hardened Chicago investigators. The crimes escalated to include other forms of violence. In one case, they carried out a drive-by shooting. They killed a drug dealer named Rafael Torado and injured another man. Authorities feared that if they were not stopped, they might attempt mass killing. And their undoing of the crew became through the survivor, Angela York and Beverly Washington. It's funny how they both have last names of cities.
They do.
And their testimonies were about this red van with the feathered clip hanging from the rearview mirror. So at this point, when both of the women had come forward and given very clear details about a specific blue feather and a specific white feather hanging from the rearview mirror of this older red van, they put out this APB. Well, when they did, they spotted the vehicle and they stopped it, and inside was Edward Spitzer. And he began to say, "It's not my van, it's not mine, blah, blah, blah." You know how it is.
It wasn't me. Patricia did it.
Yeah, right. Not me. It wasn't me. So they took him in, and then he began to unravel and, crush underneath the weight of the interrogation. And of course, he quickly turned on Robin, the leader, and described all of the nasty rituals and assaults and all that kind of stuff. But then, of course, later he recanted all that. Like, no, it wasn't them, blah, 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 blah. Then they took in the Cocorelli's brothers, and they provided enough corroboration to secure all the convictions. Because there's so many conflicting statements between all of them, prosecutors were struggling to tie any direct murder to Gecht. Imagine that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he was only convicted of mutilation, sexual assault, but he received a 120-year sentence.
Oh, I'm glad you said that really quickly because I was about to rage quit.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
But even though but he still was not convicted of murder.
What? Oh, because they couldn't prove it or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Wanna,
he should have gotten murder, but at least he got the time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's where I was about to rage quit.
Mm-hmm.
Schweitzer was actually sentenced to death, and though his penalty was later commuted to life in prison, so he's still in for life. Andrew Kokorales was actually executed by lethal injection on March 17th, 1999, and it was the last execution carried out in the state of Illinois before they quit doing the death penalty. And his brother Thomas Kokorales was sentenced to 70 years, though he gained parole after only serving decades behind bars. And the last thing I could find is like 2010 or 2015, but he still lives in like I guess it's kind of like a halfway house where has given his life to Jesus, apparently.
Huh.
So Robin Gecht is described by many as a true mastermind, and he remains in prison. His influence over the crew and his obsessions and his cult-like rituals made the case one of the darkest in Chicago's history. The murders also fed into the broader satanic panic, like you were saying, Mandi, of the 80s, a cultural phenomenon that saw thousands of accused ritual crimes that occurred. Unlike those false allegations, however, the Chicago Ripper crew's crimes were horrifyingly real. So they were some nasty bunch of fellers.
Yeah, they were.
Man, like I couldn't for the ladies that survived, for one, I couldn't imagine like surviving through that.
Mm-mm.
Like the horror, and then two, being the badasses that they are and remembering the things that they did to
That's what I
and, like try to stop them. Like that's like I hope those ladies are still around to know that they're some badasses. And two, like, statistically speaking, deranged psychopaths, gross motherfuckers like this are rare. But the fact that the four of them somehow got together and did all this together is wild. Like the statistics of that are even rare, but it's so scary to think about that the four of these found each other and worked together to do all of this.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I know that was blowing my mind too. Like, what do you say to somebody like, "Hey, want to come over and kill some ladies and eat their boobs?" Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
hey, you want to
weird.
start a cult?
Exactly.
start, is like I can maybe it did start as a, "Hey, I'm having these rituals in my attic. Do you want to come hang out?" And then I don't know, one thing. And it did say that most of the time they were under the influence of a narcotic or some kind of drug, so that may kind of explain a little bit of the craziness, but
You want to hear what I found?
yes. So I have some other.
So I did not look into all these people, but I did look into the leader, Robin,
Mm-hmm.
and I found that just some random things I found out is he was born in Chicago in 1953. He
Right.
was the middle child between six brothers and sisters. He was also the problem child. He would constantly be in trouble with the teachers and he would steal and he would set fires and he fought other students. In high school, he dropped out. He was known as a street kid. He was raised by his grandparents until they died, and then he was forced to move in with his parents. He had difficulty living with his parents, and there was some information out there that he was beaten. He would then move out at 16 years old, and he lived with various friends. And to his neighbors, he was described as friendly enough and a Mr. Fix-It. He was a skilled contractor, electrician, and all-around handyman. He had a wife, Rosemary, and they got married on August 23rd, 1975, and they would go on to have 3 children. He acted as a Manson-like leader of the crew. He was a manipulator. For a time, he worked as a furnace cleaner and then trained himself as a contractor and an electrician. So he was smart, apparently.
Right. That's
For
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was saying it would say one of the things said that like his wife worked the night shift. So when his wife would leave for work, that's when the buddies would come over and the things would happen in the attic.
And the kids were probably in bed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, a lot of that stuff that you just listed off, Naoka, a lot of those are red flags that they look for in childhood for narcissistic personality disorders, and one of those big key ones is fire starting, which makes me wonder, are there some of those really big key flags like bedwetting and animal abuse too? Because that's a lot of those ones when you look back on Gene Gacy and the serial killer I mentioned earlier about the breast just paperweights was Jerry Brudos. They find a lot in their history was, oh, and with Bundy as well, is animal abuse in childhood, fire starting, bedwetting, those kind of things.
I thought you would find that interesting for sure.
Yeah. You saw my face light up like, ah.
Uh-huh. Yep, I knew you would like that. So he trained himself to be all these things, and then for about 2.5 years, he operated his own business called R&R Electric. And friends told police that he was in the habit of employing impressionable teenage boys. So obviously, those are the kind of people that he had join him later, right? The kind he can control. In 1980, when he was charged with contributing to delinquency of a minor in connection with a sex attack on a young girl, his wife then filed for divorce, citing inhumane treatment and extreme mental cruelty. So I thought that was interesting.
I hate that like that happened to her, but I'm glad that like
She
she
got
was
out.
kept this and got out of it. Yeah, but there's another ticker, domestic violence.
And what are the odds that he would be connected to another serial killer,
Right.
John Wayne Gacy, right? So
Well,
I'm like trying to look and see how is this link connected. And the only thing that I can find was a television station, WLS TV, reported that he worked briefly for Gacy and was supposedly on the witness list used during Gacy's trial. However, authorities could not confirm there was any connection to Gacy. In another later article, like I think it was like at least 3 to 5 years later, I found where it said that authorities learned that he had done construction work for Gacy. And if you guys remember, he was the one that dressed up as a clown and he murdered 33 young men and boys back in the 1970s. So I guess he would have been younger too during this time. Robin would have. And
yeah, from what I understand that I thought that Robin was still a minor when he worked for him. And
he
that's
had to be
why he had
probably.
hired him was because he was a minor. So that is this pattern in this circle is so weird because it's going around full circle.
It really is. And a friend quoted Robin saying, quote, "The only mistake Gacy made was burying the bodies under his home," end quote.
Right. There was another quote from Gacy when he was talking with FBI agents, or he wrote a letter, and he said, "Dear Bob Rustler, you cannot hope to enjoy the harvest without first laboring in the fields." And he once told Gacy once told this to the FBI agent. So many interpret this letter as a prediction that some of his young associates would eventually become his proteges and killers themselves. And it said, what's the other part? Sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm just thinking, what a dangerous neighborhood for people to live in during that time. Like, wow.
Yeah. That's typically where like these serial killers and these psychopaths and sociopaths get caught up is because they are incredibly intelligent. They're really good, unfortunately speaking. They're really good at what they do, but because they're so arrogant and narcissistic, they get brazen, and then that's where they they start fumbling up and messing up. And yeah, that was his mess up, is because he started burying them under his house and they started smelling, and that's where people started catching on. And they start getting a little too brave, and they start, for lack of better terms, we're going to put it in Kentucky terms, they get a little too big for the britches.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then there was this one claim that I guess there was one murder that occurred that they were trying to pin to Gacy, but he had proof that he was out of town, which after they arrested Robin, they believed, and that Robin had been working for him at that time. They think possibly Robin could have been involved with that.
I mean,
Oh,
at
yeah.
this rate, I believe it. That's
something too that Gacy said. There was a quote. I thought I had it. Something about how else do you yeah, after Gacy was convicted, I'm sorry. But he was saying something about kind of to the effect of like, watch out for my proteges. I can't remember. Oh yeah. He said that he had proteges that would more than likely follow in his path. One of the
what an interesting connection.
I know. When I was starting to read all that, I was like, what? Wait, what? Like, well,
I'm surprised I didn't find more on that. I looked through every article I could find.
There's a lot of the same stuff, but it is just how it's so not bizarre, I guess, but like, I don't know, crazy that it was all happening at the same time. And then, yeah, it's like, my question still is like, how do you start these conversations with people? Like, it's like, oh, come to work with me. Oh, and by the way, at night, here's what we do. I don't.
Yeah.
Well, just like any good manipulator, they just very, very, very slowly ease them into it, and then he's like, oh, look, I got a new little protege. And because they're young, he can mold them. So I'm sure it was very easy for him to find little proteges, grossly and unfortunately.
Yeah, I think so too. He just knew people like that know what kind of people they're looking for. Yeah, they just know.
Yeah, I think it was Heather a few minutes ago had mentioned Robert Ressler, and I kind of did the woo woo. I get really excited anytime somebody mentions Robert Ressler or John Douglas. For those who don't know, they're the FBI agents that pioneered and developed the field of criminal profiling.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I get really excited when I hear about them because that's my forte and I love that stuff. But yeah, they did a lot of research into these cases as well and profiling these guys. And also Ed Kemper was one of their big ones too. So they did a lot of work on these guys as well that you can find a lot of information on.
Did you watch the series The Mindhunter?
Oh yeah, I have the book too, and I have.
I wish there was more.
Yeah, I have. I'm gonna say the book title wrong. It's Whoever Chases Monsters, or For Those Who Chase Monsters, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Really good book. I have them all in my office at work, of course, on my desk.
I have not watched that, but I'm really behind on TV, but I have finished the on Netflix. It was the brothers, the Mendez blah 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 blah
Mendez brothers.
blah blah. Yes, and it was so freaking good. Like they did such a good job on that series. I was hooked, and then it made me think, what is true and what is not true, like with the parents. Like, did they do this?
Yeah.
Did they do that? I don't
That's
know. If you guys haven't watched it, you need to, because it was something else.
I really want to hear a psychiatric profile of the brothers, but I also want to
Yes.
hear from a psychological perspective of the parents to find out what was really going on. But speaking from that perspective, I listen to a lot of other podcasts as well, not just you, Nayek. I'm sorry I cheat on you.
Jeez, I'm just kidding.
But one I really like. Can I plug another podcast?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, one I really really like is Killer Psyche, with Candace DeLong, because she goes a lot into the forensic psychology of cases and stuff, because she was an FBI criminal profiler as well.
Oh, I'll have to listen to her.
Yeah, and you guys know that's my
Yeah.
jam. So I listen to her a lot too.
Yeah. I would love to hear the thoughts on the brothers, because yeah, I'm dying to know, were the parents abusive or were they not? Or I don't know. How do you get two bad eggs and brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But Good show. It was a good show. This has nothing to do with this case at all, but I had to
Yeah,
mention it.
I think we all just end up running away with each other. But
Yeah.
you did an awesome job at covering like all aspects and making a lot of connections.
Yeah.
These other cases like we were talking about. Yeah. I think that's how we ran away, is because she made so many good connections.
She really did. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of information.
We said the Menendez brothers. We had two brothers in this case.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I guess you can't have two bad apples come
It
from
really sucks for the parents, right? To have two bad ones.
No joke.
That's the whole nature nurture thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is it? Both? Who knows?
Well, yeah, because they've been doing a lot of research. Here I go on my tangent again. They've been doing a lot of research on the nature versus nurture thing, and they're finding out that it's not one or the other. It can be a very mix of both, because they found out that the whole idea of the nature versus nurture was created by he was a statistician. He wasn't even a psychologist or a sociologist, and it was based off of the idea of eugenics.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
it was basically a bullshit wives' tale, and now that they're proving it can be a little bit of everything. It's not just, you have a bad kid that grows up in a bad neighborhood. You can have a bad kid that grows up in a bad neighborhood and end up having an Ivy League amazing kid that wins a Nobel Peace Prize. It's
Right.
crapshoot.
That's
Because
so true.
as you saw with Robin, all of his brothers and sisters were generally good kids, and then there's Robin, who is, for lack of better
Trouble.
terms, insane.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
hot piece of wet lettuce.
That's so true. Oh, man. Thank you guys for coming on. I love having guests. It makes it so much better than just talking to myself.
I want to see somebody for that.
I appreciate it. And I'm sure everybody will hear both of you again. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
stop it. Just stop it.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say the same thing. Sorry. You opened a can of worms when you said, yes, you can do one.
You know.
I was like,
It's
oh,
been
wait for
fun.
me.
I love it. You guys can come on whenever you want. So
Thanks.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the help. But thanks for all your work. And
Thank you guys.
don't have anything clever to end with. So yeah. Oh no, I'll insert my granddaughter here.
Thanks for listening.
So anyway, all right.
Put the knife down.
Put the knife down.
Let's
I
have
need to
your
remember.
hand.
Yeah, I'll have to have her say that.
It's a knife.
Grab the tape.
Oh my God. Well, I guess that's it until next time. Thank you guys again for coming on. Goodbye.
Bye.
Adios, Burchachas.